box. You know what that is? It's a Band-Aid, huh? Wait, Micah, are there different size Band-Aids? Yeah, which one would you put on a big owie? Which one would you put on a big owie? That one? Yeah, that's a big Band-Aid for a big owie. Which one would you want to put on a little owie? That one? What's this one for? What's this for?
It's for drawing.
For drawing? It's a pencil?
We've been drawing on them.
Oh, that's right. Katie's
Yeah.
been marking these for her classes. This morning we're talking about healing and Jesus healing somebody. And sometimes we have owies that get better and they're on the outside. We have someone here who had hand surgery and she has a serious owie on the outside. Sometimes we have an owie on the inside. Mike, if you go to the doctor, do they put this on your tongue?
No.
They put this on your tongue to see as far as they can inside, but they can't really see what's going on the inside. But Jesus came not only to heal the owies that we have on the outside, but to heal the owies we have on the inside. Mike, did you ever get sad? Do you ever miss people? Micah likes to tell us how often he's hungry. That's a major pain Micah deals with on the inside. Jesus came to heal us not only on the outside, but also on the inside of owies that we've had for a long time. All right. Well, thank you. You guys have been great.
Micah, stand up. Okay. Huh?
We'll be in John chapter 9 this morning.
I want to play a game on the phone.
She can go back to the playroom if she wants. She doesn't have to. It's up to her. As you guys are looking up John chapter 9, we've been going through John, and you're going to see some regular themes that we've talked about in John come up in this healing. I actually preached on this, I think it was in the spring. I preached this sermon at our last church in Springfield Church of God, and one of the things I had to tell them was that they were part of a healing process for me, because up till that point, I had been living in Mackenzie Bridge and became a firefighter and a teacher, and we went through a horrendous fire in September of 2020 that took out about 2/3 of the houses, of people's houses, and we lost about 2/3 of our population. And that healing there is still going on. And it wasn't so much even, a lot of people think it was the night of the fire, and the night for me was very, very exciting, to be sure, but it was actually the aftermath that was the most detrimental on me. For the first week and a half, I thought that everything was my fault as a firefighter because we couldn't contain it, and that everything was as bad as what I had seen. That everything was gone, and I thought hundreds of people must have died. And that's just how I lived for about a week and a half. And I just kept fighting on for 5 years. I just kept pushing through, and then something happened in our family that just kind of broke everything. And I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, had a very exciting time where it broke out. I was driving, and I had a PTSD episode, and luckily we were able to pull over, and Katie was able to take over driving. But my time in Springfield was my time of escaping and healing. And PTSD is one of these things that's very hard to talk about and explain. And it's hard for people to grasp everything that goes on because it's different from everybody else. But during that time, I was able to go and finally get into EMDR therapy, which is something I had heard about for those 5 years. Everyone says, you can go get EMDR therapy. And I was like, how? Where? Who? Who's going to pay for it? Those kind of questions. But I was finally able to get in there, and I'm still able to do it here. I do it online here still, able to meet with him. But one of the things that I figured out from that process is everyone has their own stuff that they're dealing with. And everyone heals differently and deals with those things differently. And everyone has different things that they need to heal from. And in our story this morning, we're going to have the man who's blind, but we're going to have another group of people that, because of stuff they've been through, stuff they've never healed from, they are spiritually blind, or they can't see Jesus for who he is. One of the things that happens in this account, as well as we're talking about blindness, is that sometimes there are things that we can see that are a visible problem. And there's sometimes things that we can't see that are an invisible problem. I think that one of the things that we have to think about as Christians is that sometimes it's a lot easier to deal with the visible problems than it is the invisible problems. As someone that is a third-generation person in ministry, there's been people that have come in to churches that have visible problems, maybe even visible sin problems. But usually the most damage was caused by people that had invisible problems, especially invisible sin problems, where it wasn't put into check and eventually it blew up. In this story, Jesus is setting up a scenario like he's done in the past. This time he's doing it on a much larger scale. He's going to set up the scene, and then he's going to leave. And he's going to let the scene play out, and then he's going to come back later. All we know is that his disciples are able to see what's going on. So in verse 1, it says, "As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, 'Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?'" So the disciples have this response that is not unheard of. They choose to focus on blame and fault instead of thinking about what this man is going through. They ask the question, who can we scapegoat for this thing that makes us so uncomfortable? Instead of saying, "Jesus, Rabbi, you have told us that you're the Messiah, can you heal him?" They want him still to fit into the rabbi that's just going to tell them the answers that they want to hear. Who can I blame for this? Jesus responds, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I'm in the world, I am the light of the world." Jesus talks about something here to his disciples. He talks about the idea of work. He says, there's work that needs to be done. And then he even says, there's a limited time that we need to do this. Healing holistically takes work, effort, and most of all, discomfort. My therapists were kind of impressed by how open I would be with them, but after going through what I went through, I really had nothing to lose to just tell them the truth. But this is where I'm at. It was still very uncomfortable to talk about. I had to talk about people that I loved, but I had to talk about some stuff that had happened. And I had to go week after week. And sometimes after I was done, I'd have to say, "Katie, I need you to come get me. I don't think I can drive home safely tonight. I'm not doing very well." Eventually it got to the point I'd say, "I know I'm already coming home late from work because I had to go to therapy, but I'm going to go somewhere and decompress before I come home." For other people, this healing takes even more work, takes even more effort or discomfort. If you go to a hospital to see the area, the wing of the hospitals where they do people's rehabilitation after a surgery, it looks like somewhat like a torture chamber or a gym, or a cross between a torture chamber and a gym. They're like, we're going to stretch you this way and pull you that way and make you sweat and breathe heavy. And that's what they have to go through for their healing to happen. Jesus says, for healing to happen, it's going to take work, and there's limited time to get this work done. And he talks about, again, I am the light of the world. And as I was working on this, I came up with some points about healing. If you want to write these down, I have like a notes section in the bulletin. Healing point number 1. Do they feel like they need to be healed from this seen or unseen problem? When it comes to someone's healing, their desire to be healed is very, very important. There's lots of people that do not feel like they have a problem. And it doesn't matter how bad that problem is. My job in Springfield, outside of the church, my secondary job was I was a social worker that worked with 40-year-old men that usually had come out of parole, and they were in transitional housing, and it was my job to get them a job, a place to stay on their own, and just make sure they showed up for court appearances and did what they were supposed to do to get their life on the road. And I tell you what, some of these guys took the longest time for them to accept that they had stuff that had been holding them back for a very, very long time. They had to accept that it was a problem before they could be healed from it. And it was my job, and I think that ministry really played into it, to try and illustrate to them that it was a problem. I described my old job as I was a logic Jiminy Cricket that would go around with them wherever they went. They were at the store, and I'd say, you shouldn't buy that, you're diabetic. I wouldn't be allowed to smack it out of their hand, but I'd tell them, you shouldn't eat that. Or they'd say, I met somebody down at a lady down at the halfway house. We really hit it off. And I'd say, you don't need to be worrying about that right now. And you definitely don't need to date anyone from a halfway house. You, my friend, should not date. You're not good at it. Just take a break. Get a job. Get a place. That was my job. Sometimes they would accept it. Sometimes they wouldn't. There was a man that I started off with, and he turned his life around and got a job, and then I saw him about 8 months later at a benevolence event saying, I got fired. And he said, what do I do? And I said, the things I told you to do, do those things. I just can't be there for you anymore. But denial is a slow, steady killer. I know this not only from that, but I know that as a first responder. So often as a first responder, I'd show up and just have to be reiterating what doctors had told people. You'd show up and say, what's going on? I said, I didn't take my meds. You should do that. You should take your meds. For me, I'm not just pointing out other people, I knew that I needed to heal a long time before I started to move in that direction. What happened for me was I went to a medical conference that is held for first responders, especially those who are working in medical, where they get trained a lot in one weekend and come back with a lot of training hours, and then they can share what they learned with the rest of the group. And that was me, and Katie and Micah went with me. Micah was really young at that point. And I went to a breakout session that had everything to do with mental health, first responders, and they were kind of ticking off like, this could be wrong with you, like, you may have PTSD, and it was kind of a worksheet, you may have PTSD, and I was like, yeah, that's me, started having this sinking feeling in my stomach as I went down the list, oh, I'm in trouble. And I went back to our hotel room right after that. I had to get out of there. And I went into our hotel room, and there was this beautiful scene that was in front of me. There was the Oregon coast, the sun was out, if you can acknowledge, you know what I'm talking about. And it was coming in through the windows in the hotel room. And there was Micah playing with Katie on the bed, and it was just the sun, the rays, Katie and Micah. It was a beautiful scene, but I knew that I was broken. I was looking at the scene, but I wasn't okay. Each of us have to come to terms with the fact that we may need healing. The blind man, we're find out, accepted his healing. I'm missing some verses here. Having said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. Jesus knows what he is doing here. Jesus did not need to spit and make mud and put it on the man's eyes for this man to be healed. This is something we've talked about in John. Jesus could have just said the word. Jesus could have just touched his shoulder. Like the woman that touched the hem of his cloak, this blind man could have just touched Jesus. Jesus knows exactly what he's doing here. When I was working on this sermon the first time, I told Katie, I said, I really want to make like some spitting sounds when I do this sermon, just to really illustrate. And she said, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. So I'll give you some homework. I want you to go home, and I want you to spit on the ground until you have enough spit to make mud. You'll get the general idea of what I'm trying to get across. Jesus spat, made enough mud to put on his eyes. Now we can theologically talk about, I've heard sermons where we were made from dust, so Jesus was like molding eyes, he was like rolling the mud in his hands and he like popped them in. That's what he was doing. Either way, Jesus spat enough to make enough mud to cover his eyes. That's gross. We just have to say it. And Jesus did this because he knew that's gross. That's gross. It's unclean. But there's something else that he was doing. He was once again violating Sabbath law. He was violating one of the Sabbath laws, one of the 39 original established Sabbath laws that says that you're supposed to build or make or shape. He also mixed, which is another one. I usually have this nice slide that has the 39 Sabbath laws, like a periodical table. So he broke these two on purpose. But we have to understand that Jesus started this learning process, this whole expedition, by making mud, putting on his eyes, and then he says, now, go. Also not necessary. I want you to go almost 2 miles through Jerusalem to the Pool of Siloam. The Pool of Siloam was kind of all the way as far as you could get from the temple. And it was through kind of a congested area, but there would be enough room for everyone to see what was going on and follow what was going on. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but humans are kind of like sheep. If there's a crowd moving towards something, what happens? Everyone starts moving. Sometimes here at the local store, I will be standing looking at something, and someone will stand next to me, and I'll just go, oh, I'm not in line for the cash register. It's just a really small store. But us humans, we follow each other. And Jesus says, I want to set up this scene. Cover this guy's eyes with mud. That's quite the spectacle. Tell him, go all the way down here. Jesus wanted to reach as many people as possible. Verse 8, his neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Others said, no, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. Again, denial is a slow killer. How then were your eyes opened? It's a great question. He replied, the man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed. Then I could see. Where is this man? They asked him. I don't know, he said, because Jesus had set it up and left. Although this man was uncertain and probably a little embarrassed, he went and did the action steps Jesus put forth as how he could be healed. It was probably a little humiliating. He probably did not enjoy having to walk all the way down there and having all these people follow him. He probably did not enjoy the Inquisition. But he knew that if he wanted to be healed, he had to follow through. He had to do just what Jesus told him, which has been an ongoing topic all the way since Jesus' first miracle at the wedding at Cana. Jesus' mother says, just do what he tells you. The second miracle of the important official, he said, go home, even though I'm not going with you and you came to get me. Go home. And he did. The third miracle, the healing at the pool, get up and pick up your mat. And he did. In feeding the 5,000, he said, give me that kid's Happy Meal. And they did. Crossing the sea in John 6. Stop being afraid. And they did. And then, now in John 9, he says, go wash. And he did. An ongoing topic throughout the Gospel of John is just do what he tells you. Do what he tells you. Now you may hear this and say, but Brent, he hasn't told me what to do. And I will say, as someone that went through my own healing process, he probably has. He probably has. When we really get honest with ourselves, there were things we heard in sermons or while we were reading the Word, and we knew it was God saying, go, do. Maybe even now, he's saying it so that we would be healed, and we did not. I had countless pastors who cared about me who told me to slow down, to take a break. I had countless caregivers, and sometimes I'd even have co-workers that tell me, take a break. I'd be like, so you want me to take time off work? They're like, no, but, take a vacation. Okay. But there were lots of things where God was trying to get a hold of me. I wasn't ready to hear it. I believed that I could overcome it, which is common for people that are in first responding. We think we handle trauma well, so we keep on being traumatized. And then we find out that our closet explodes and it all comes out. I clearly heard God say, stop and heal. But I kept on going for 3 more years, and I really wish I hadn't. So this morning, it's more of, I don't want that for you, if God's trying to get a hold of you. In verse 13, they brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was the Sabbath. Therefore the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He put mud on my eyes, the man replied, and I washed, and now I see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others asked, how can a sinner perform such signs? So they were divided. Which brings me to my second healing point. Jesus heals who humbly come to him, no matter what version of things we have, or whatever version we think things play out. They had this theological discussion of how things should be, and Jesus said, I'm God. I decide who I heal, how I heal, when I heal, where I heal. Everyone had decided that this man had received his due punishment for some unseen sin. It's basically a Jewish version of karma. And honestly, there are Christians this day who still believe that people are receiving punishment for unseen sin, which is some Christian version of karma, which is not what Jesus stood for. This group of Pharisees should be praising and ecstatic that a man was healed. But we've seen this before. They're having that older brother syndrome from the prodigal son story. They're gatekeeping. They don't like the fact that God saw this person More importantly, maybe they feel like God hasn't seen their hurt. Jesus is trying to build a bridge, and they're building a gate. There's some Christians who really need to reread Jesus' approach to non-believers and those who were the religious. Where did Jesus go? What did Jesus do? Who constantly was there making everything harder for him? Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest. Take on my yoke upon, and you will learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Acts 15:10. Now then, why do you try to test God by putting on the necks of the disciples a yoke that neither we nor our fathers have been able to bear? Our excitement as Christians, even to this day, should be excitement about people receiving healing through Jesus, no matter which way they do that. People need healing, and we aren't the ones who do it. No matter how much I have felt close to God and had experiences with the Holy Spirit, there are times where I know that God healed and I was a part of it, but I know that I did not heal them. There isn't a time, it hasn't been so many times as a first responder, where I wish that I could have healed people. As I've gotten to know the young people at this school, I've run into 3 young men who very pridefully drive recklessly around the community. They've told me with great excitement. And I told them, I don't like cutting my students out of cars. I don't like praying that they'll be healed and not having that prayer answered. I can't heal, but I can lead those who need healing to the one who can. We have received healing from our sins, and hopefully that's even grown to the point that we have received healing from other hurts and pains, maybe physical, but maybe in our hearts. And then we should be the road signs for those who are looking for healing, but not the roadblocks. One of the things I'd often tell youth whenever they'd ask me why I believe in the Bible is I'd say, I know the Bible is true because of all the Pharisees I run into while trying to lead people to the great physician. And I can't control that. All I can control is if I start to act like them. My old ministry professor, on the inside of his Bible, he had the 12 steps from the 12-step programs, the sobriety. But he'd always say, I need God's help because I am a recovering Pharisee. There's things that happen in our lives that make us feel that way, that make us feel like that older brother. And we need to ask for healing as well. Then they turned again to the blind man. What have you to say about him? It was your eyes he opened. The man replied, he is a prophet? They still did not believe that he had been blind, that received his sight, until they sent for his man's parents. Is this your son? They asked. Is this the one who was born blind? How is it now that he can see? We know he is our son, the parents answered, and we know that he was born blind, but how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who already had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, he is of age, ask him. Healing point number 3. Are you looking for healing or validation? Seeking validation might be your only reward. But if you seek healing, you must understand and accept the effort it requires. The Pharisees in this situation, they wanted to be told that they were right. And that's why they decided to go at this one more time. They didn't want the answer that was being presented to them. They wanted validation for what they had held on to for such a long time. Too often we want validation, and God wants us to actually be healed. The man's neighbors didn't get it. This man's parents wanted nothing to do with it. The healed person, though, was all about it. A second time, they summoned the man who had been blind. Give glory to God and by telling the truth, they said, we know this man is a sinner. He replied, whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. Then they asked him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered, I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Then they hurled insults at him and said, you are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from. The man answered, now that's remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening a man's eyes, opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. To this they replied, you were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us? And they threw him out. I feel like as I was working toward this, John has been working towards this point for a while. When I was working on this, I've done John before, but man, John 9 really stuck out to me that this was a point in John's gospel where he really wanted us to listen. Healing point number 4. Jesus uses healing to reach the right people. These Pharisees need a blind, poor man to teach them some things about God. Jesus knew that he was the right man for the job, this blind man. He didn't know a lot about theology. He didn't go to seminary. He just knew that God did not let sinners do godly things. And that's all he needed to know to stand up to them. He also needed to know the truth, that he was blind, and now he sees. Jesus now re-enters the scene. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out. When he found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? Who is he, sir? The man asked. Tell me so that I may believe in him. Jesus said, you have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you. Then the man said, Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. Jesus said, for judgment I have come into the world so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind. Some Pharisees who were with him heard him saying this and asked, what, are we blind too? Jesus said, if you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. It's time for some references. Jesus is making a profound statement here. And he's been trying to teach this for a while now. In Luke chapter 4, verse 18, he says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to set liberty those who are oppressed. In John 12, verse 40 through 41, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they see with their eyes and understand with their heart and turn. I would heal them. Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory and spoke of him. In 1 John later on in his life, chapter 2, verse 11, but whoever hates his brother and is in darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. The thing that I know as someone who has grown up in the church, my grandfather was a pastor, my dad was a pastor, then missionary, now here am I. One thing that I know is that there are people both inside and outside the church that need healing. That's both internally and that's also externally. I know that I cannot heal them all. All I can do is be a road sign, a flare, a light on a hill that's directing them to where they can go. For this to happen, I think especially since right now I'm talking to people on the inside, we all need to reflect on our own healing needs and be honest with ourselves. One of the reasons that we have the rhythm of church and the rhythm of Bible study and the rhythm of devotion time, hopefully you have that in your life, is so that you can sit down and be honest, at least with ourselves, about how things are going. How our actions are bringing people to the Lord, how our actions and attitudes are helping us come to the Lord. After we're honest, we can start to identify areas that we know we need to be healed from. And more importantly, when we start to be honest with ourselves and the fact that we need healing, we have already become a supportive place for others to do that as well. The other thing that we need to do is we need to not only personally reflect, we need to not gatekeep. Our role as Christians is not to blame or scapegoat, but to bring people to the healer. Yesterday, as I was watching the corralling of animals, all I could think of was all the people that were blocking and pushing the animals in a certain direction. And I was thinking about this sermon today, and they were trying to get the pigs, what I was watching, or the goats, where they actually needed to go, or where they wanted to go. But they didn't know. I saw one of my fellow teachers have to knee a pig in the head to get it to go the right direction. And I think that one of the things is that sometimes someone will ask us for the truth and we'll have to tell them and it'll feel like a knee to the head. I know that sometimes when people were telling me, I need to slow down, I need to stop, I need to heal, I felt like it was a judgment. Like maybe I'm not doing very well, or I should be doing better. They weren't gatekeeping though. They were trying to direct me. They were trying to be that guardrail for me. There are two choices. Either we go out and reach the sick like Jesus did, or here at this place, we need to create a space where healing and growth can happen, where we are acknowledging that we all have room to heal. Jesus says that he came not to heal those who didn't need to be fixed, but he came for the people that needed to be healed. I think as Christians, we are called to do both. There's a lot of action words in this passage, a lot of go, a lot of telling his disciples it takes work, and that's the going out. As I look into this week, I know that I get to go out, and I get to be that logic Jiminy Cricket for high school students now. Don't put your hand in that hot pot while we're canning. It'll hurt. Don't show up late for class. I won't mark you as tardy. That's just how it works. But at the same time, I know that I am trying to bring them to the healer. And if I ever do succeed, what I hope that they find when they come here is that they find a group of people that they're able to say, I'm healing too. I don't have it all figured out. I'm not perfect. I have hurts, I have scars. My jar holds Jesus, but man, that jar's got some cracks and chips and some Bondo holding it together some days. So that they know that they are in a place where they can heal and focus on Jesus and focus on what they really need to focus on instead of the things that the Pharisees were always worried about, which were minors and not majors. Let's end in prayer. Lord, I thank you that all of us have had past hurts, habits, hang-ups, physical ailments, sicknesses, close calls where we know that you were involved. It was one of the eye-opening experiences for us where we knew you were with us. We knew that you loved us. Lord, I pray that we would not hoard grace, that we would acknowledge that we receive it freely from you, and that we would answer the call of the work that you have come to do. That you have come to shine light in the darkness, and all we can do is reflect that light through our lives. I pray that we would start by starting to shine that light in our own lives, being honest about things that have hurt us for a very long time that we need to heal from. So that we would feel healed, and like this man, we would be able to sing your praises because you have finally taken it away from us. And Lord, I also pray that we would be folks that are humble and honest and able to let the folks around us know that we are imperfect here. That we are here because we have hurts and we have things that we are coming to you to still heal. And sometimes we just have a week that really works us over and we need to recover. And Lord, I pray that our hearts and minds would just point towards you in a humble way, that we would not be lording it over, but that we would be humbly coming alongside those who are looking for healing as well. Lord, I pray this in your name. Amen. Katie, if you can hear me, do the last song. Oh, it's not, Katie, I forgot.